She didn't leave you. She left the version of you that played the role she assigned. You were her rock, her fixer, her emotional sponge, her projection screen. But not once did she pause to ask who you truly were behind all that function. Maybe you didn't either, because somewhere along the way you agreed to the part. You played it well. You thought it was love. But what it really was casting. Temporary, replaceable, conditional. What stings isn't just the loss. The realization that you weren't really seen, that her so-called connection was built on your performance, not your presence. She didn't love the man, she loved the mask. And when the mask started to crack, when your real needs surfaced, when your deeper self tried to emerge, she recoiled. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your reality disrupted her fantasy. Carl Jung called this the collapse of the persona, the moment. When the character you constructed can no longer carry the weight of your unlived truth, that collapse is terrifying, but it's also necessary. Because as long as you keep chasing her validation, if you're not reclaiming yourself, if you're negotiating your identity like a servant begging for favor, you want her to regret leaving? Stop chasing the version of you she discarded. That man was never sovereign. He was domesticated. He was agreeable, eager to please, terrified to offend. And that version of you made her feel safe but not aroused, useful but not admired, present but not powerful. Here's the raw reality. Women don't mourn roles. They mourn presence. They mourn depth. They mourn the man they never fully got to have. So the moment you withdraw, not in anger, but in awakening, you begin the metamorphosis she never believed you were capable of. And that's when regret is born. Quietly. In her mind. In her body. Long after you've gone, she didn't leave. She left a role. And now, it's time to leave him behind too. In the beginning, you were a myth. It's not because you lied, but because she never truly saw you. She projected something onto you, Anne's image, a fantasy, an emotional archetype. Maybe it was the stoic protector, the man who could rescue her from her own chaos. Maybe it was the emotionally available partner she never had. It doesn't matter. The key point is this. She didn't fall in love with you. She fell in love with what you symbolized to her unconscious. And in that projection, you felt powerful. Worshipped even. Her eyes sparkled with need. Her body responded to your presence like it was gravity. You believed this was love. But what? You didn't realize what most men never realize is that this high comes with a cliff. Because projection is temporary, is unstable, is doomed to rupture the moment reality intrudes. And reality always intrudes. One day she saw your uncertainty, your fear, your wounded boy. Or maybe she just got bored and the thrill of the fantasy faded. That's when the same man who once intoxicated her suddenly repulsed her. That's when your honesty became weakness, your devotion became neediness, your desire became pressure. The pedestal cracked. And you weren't worshipped where you were pitied. Or worse, ignored. Carl Jung taught that projection is the transfer of our unlived life onto another. She projected her longing for meaning, stability, mystery onto you. But when you failed to sustain the illusion, the resentment came swift. And here's the tragedy. You internalized it. You believed that you failed, that if only you were stronger, more secure, more masculine, she would have stayed. That's false. You weren't the problem. The fantasy was the problem. So when fantasy meets reality, disillusionment is inevitable. So now you ask yourself, how do I make her regret? Losing me? But let's get brutally honest. You're still playing into the same projection. You want her to chase your image? You're a truth. And that means you haven't evolved. You're still performing. Still outsourcing your worth to her gaze. Let that end today. You don't need her regret. You need your liberation from the need to be her fantasy. She didn't replace you because you were unworthy. She replaced you because her instincts told her she could. And that truth-cold, biological, unspoken is the one that breaks most men. You thought love was sacred? She treated it like strategy. You thought history mattered? She followed momentum. And when something shinier, louder, or more validating appeared, her instincts moved. No apology, no guilt, just transition. This isn't malice, it's nature. Schopenhauer described women as the embodiment of the species' will to survive ever. Selecting, ever optimizing. Hypergamy is not some internet buzzword. It's the unconscious drive of the female to secure the highest value mate she believes she can maintain, not maintain. The moment she perceives she can do better socially, emotionally, material, you become negotiable. You want to believe you were different, that your love stood out. Nature doesn't care about poetry, it cares about patterns. And if you were emotionally collapsing, financially stagnant, spiritually adrift, her body registered you as risk. And risk is expendable. But here's the twist. Even the man she upgrades to isn't safe, because her regret isn't moral, it's comparative. She won't miss you until what she finds next fails to make her feel more valuable. Then she'll look back. Then the memory of you becomes more potent than it ever was in real time. But only if you've become unrecognizable in your absence. Most men make the mistake of waiting. Posting cryptic messages, trying to trigger jealousy, pathetic rituals that scream, "I'm still orbiting you," but real regret requires contrast. When she sees that the man she left has risen, not in spite, but in silence, that's when her narrative fractures. That's when she starts wondering if she miscalculated. So ask yourself this. Are you becoming a man who forces reflection, or one who keeps begging for attention? Her instincts moved on. Let yours evolve. Don't chase her memory, eclipse it. Thought you were being vulnerable. Thought your openness, your loyalty, your constant availability would prove your worth. But to her, it felt like something else. It felt like weight, like pressure, like the quiet suffocation of a man who needed her to be whole. She didn't leave because you cried once. She didn't leave because you shared your fears. She left because beneath those things, she could feel it too, were building your identity around her presence. And nothing kills attraction faster than being turned into a life raft for someone drowning in there. Own emptiness, your neediness. It wasn't about affection, it was about existence. You made her your mission. She became your mirror, your drug, your emotional oxygen. And at first, it felt romantic. But over time, it morphed into dependency. You stopped leading. You stopped breathing on your own. And she could feel it in every text, every silence, every glance you were vanishing into her. This is what men often confuse. Attention is not love. Approval is not intimacy. Reassurance is not truth. She gave you signs. She pulled away subtly. Less eye contact, less warmth, delayed replies. But you doubled down. Thought more effort would revive her interest. Thought emotional urgency could compensate for lost polarity. But women don't respect collapse. They sense when a man is emotionally outsourcing his stability, and deep down, they resent it. Because now they must become the center, the leader, the emotional compass. Even if she tries for a while, her biology will rebel. She will retreat. She will look elsewhere, not for a prettier face, but for gravity. Here's the truth. She didn't leave because you were broken. She left because you were leaking energy, focus, meaning. And no woman wants to play the role of savior for long. She wants to feel the current of a man who carries his pain like purpose, not plea. So if you want her to regret, stop performing pain like theater. Transmute it. Become the man who no longer begs to be loved but chooses who gets access to his soul. You believed she was tender, empathetic, soft, and for a while, she was. But tenderness is not the default state of womanhood. It is a temporary response to advantage, to strength, to status, to safety. Remove those things, and what emerges is not cruelty but calculation. Cold and different, biological selection. Arthur Schopenhauer called it the will of the species. The idea that the female is not governed by logic or morality, but by the unconscious drive to optimize survival. Not for herself, but for the genetic code she carries. Her choices aren't about romance, they're about efficiency. She selects based on potential. on security, on dominance. And she will abandon sentiment the moment it threatens the algorithm. That's why your vulnerability didn't touch her soul, it threatened her instinct. She may have cried with you, slept beside you, whispered forever. But when the winds changed, when your edge dulled, when your focus fractured, she didn't ask why. She simply felt less. And from that point on, she began to detach. No explosion, just distance. That's how evolution works. You can't hate her for this. Your blindness to it. You bought into the illusion of equality, of shared emotional labor, of mutual understanding. But that illusion is cultural. Her biology is older than language, older than love songs. It's a system that rewards utility, not virtue. And yet, here's the paradox. It's because she is ruled by instinct that your transformation is so effective. If you evolve not theatrically, but authentically, her unconscious will notice. Her memory will stir. She may not return. Feel a shift, a question, a fracture in the story she told herself about you. But this time, you don't need her to feel guilt. You don't need revenge. You need clarity. The kind of clarity that turns pain into posture, loss into legend. That's how you transcend the Schopenhauerian game, not by winning her back, but by stepping out of the arena entirely. She was never yours. She was the species acting through her. And now, so are you. But this time, consciously you thought you loved her. But what you actually loved was the part of yourself you had long abandoned. She was radiant, expressive, emotionally alive. She brought warmth into the cold architecture of your psyche. You thought she completed you? But Carl Jung would say, differently, he'd say she mirrored your anima, the feminine soul image buried inside every man. The anima isn't just about emotion or softness. She represents everything you've exiled from your masculine identity. Intuition, vulnerability, creative chaos, sensual depth. And when a woman arrives who embodies those qualities, you don't just feel attracted, you feel enchanted, possessed, like you've come home to something you didn't know you lost. But here's the danger. When you haven't integrated your anima, you don't relate to her consciously. You project her outward, onto the nearest woman who reflects those traits. Suddenly, she becomes the muse, the meaning, the medicine. You don't just desire her, you worship her. And that's the trap. Because no woman can carry that weight for long. She begins to sense it, the spiritual hunger in your gaze. It's the longing behind every compliment. You don't just want her body, you want her to make you whole. And the moment she feels that pressure, the spell begins to break. What once felt romantic now feels suffocating. What once flattered her now feels like a burden. She sees it clearly before you do. She's not your salvation, she's your projection. So when she leaves, it feels like death. It's not just heartbreak, but ego death. Because it's not just that she's gone, it's that your image of wholeness shattered with her. You don't miss her, you miss who you were in her presence. You miss the reflection, the mythology. But this is the turning point. Jung would tell you this pain is a gift, because now you must reclaim the anima within. You must become emotionally literate, soulful, radiant, integrated. You must become the man who no longer seeks divinity in her, but cultivates it in himself. Only then can you meet a woman without needing her, without worshiping her, without losing yourself inside her. She was never the source. She was the signal. Now it's time to go inward and meet what she awakened. You want to be powerful? Then learn how to alchemize pain, not bypass it, not medicate it, transmute it. Rejection, when it first hits, feels like erasure, like the world no longer reflects your existence. The texts stop. The warmth evaporates. Her silence grows louder than any insult. And in that space, most men crumble. They spiral into shame, rage, or pitiful fantasies of getting her back. But those are the instincts of a man still clinging to the outer world for inner meaning. The masculine path begins when you stop reaching outward and begin forging inward. Not for vengeance, not for validation, but for rebirth. Because the man she left was half-formed, unaware of his boundaries, addicted to her presence. Still waiting to be chosen? That man has to die. Let rejection become your crucible. Let it expose the places where you made her your purpose, your mirror, your mother. Let it burn through the lies you told yourself that your softness would win her back, that your patience made you a good man, that suffering earns loyalty. No, none of it does. Women don't reward pain. They respond to power, not domination, but gravity, depth, direction. Carl Jung wrote that the shadow that repressed, disowned parts of yourself is the doorway to transformation, and heartbreak is a spotlight on that shadow. You'll see your desperation, your emptiness, your entitlement. You'll see how you gave too much because you didn't believe you were enough without being needed. That truth cuts deep, but it's holy. Because now, finally, you're free to rebuild not as a reaction to her, but as a devotion to your own becoming. And from that fire, something sharper emerges. A man who doesn't chase, who doesn't convince, who doesn't negotiate his dignity. A man who walks forward not to be seen, but because his path calls. Do you want her to regret leaving and stop orbiting the ashes, become unrecognizable, become undeniable, forge a life so aligned, so magnetic, that her memory of you becomes a source of discomfort she can never explain? Rejection isn't the end. It's the forge. Step in. She expects drama. She expects begging. She expects the long text, the public. Break down the performance of male fragility. Because that's what most men give her when she walks away: emotional residue. Proof that she still matters. Proof that she still owns space in your psyche. But indifference, that's a different language. One she doesn't know how to read. When you stop reacting, you disappear from the emotional radar completely. Something primal stirs in her. Not guilt, not sympathy, but confusion. The story she told herself that she was in control, that you'd always orbit her gravitational pull, suddenly fractures. You don't chase, you don't retaliate. You simply vanish, not in bitterness, but in calm disinterest. And that silence, it haunts. Here's what you need to understand. Women can't regret losing you if they still feel your energy. Even hatred feeds them. Even anger validates. But when you become emotionally still, when you treat her like a closed chapter instead of an open wound, that's when she starts to look over her shoulder. Schopenhauer wrote that human desire is a pendulum swinging between want and boredom. Your absence creates want, not because you manipulate, but because you remove the option. You become unavailable, not just in contact, but in thought, in presence, in emotional accessibility. And that's when you begin to regain control, not over her, but over yourself. This doesn't mean you suppress pain. It means you refine it. You channel it into precision, into posture, into silence that speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. You don't need her to see you. You need to see yourself clearly, without distortion, without the ache to be remembered. Because the man who no longer clings to being understood is the man who starts to become feared not violently, but spiritually. His absence becomes a question. Stillness becomes a mirror. She won't say it out loud, but she'll feel it. He's gone, and he's not looking back. You want to make her regret? Then mean your goodbye. Indifference is not the absence of care. It's the presence of power. You think she remembers the man who texted her 10 times after the breakup? The one who posted cryptic quotes, stalked her socials, showed up in coincidental places? No. That man becomes noise, clutter, just another echo of her control, but the one who disappears fully. Gracefully and without bitterness, that man becomes myth. She may not admit it. She may not even understand it. But the man who walks away, without a trace, leaves a question that never dies. Not because he's manipulating, but because he no longer needs to be seen. His withdrawal isn't passive. It's deliberate. It's a declaration. I no longer trade in the currency of your approval. And that's rare, because most men, when abandoned, seek reflection. They want to be reinserted into her mental landscape. They think, if she remembers me, she'll regret. But memory is not controlled by noise, it's shaped by contrast. And silence, powerful, self-contained silence is contrast. Jung would call this individuation, the process of becoming whole in yourself, no longer orbiting the feminine as savior or judge. The moment you no longer seek reunion, you begin transcendence. You walk away not to punish, not to provoke, but because your direction is forward, because you have finally realized you were never hers to begin with. And this is where her story begins to unravel. Because she expected grief, not growth. She expected chaos, not composure. She expected to forget you. But now you're not a wound or a ghost. Sovereign echo that lingers not in what you say, but in what you've become. She won't say it out loud. But when the next man falls short, when the conversations feel forced, when the intimacy lacks depth, she will remember. Not because she misses who you were, but because she now sees who you could have been. And that is the kind of regret that cuts without blood. Quiet, lingering. UNRESOLVABL. So you walk. Not for impact, but for integrity. You walk as the man who no longer needs to be returned to, because you have returned to yourself, and that is unforgettable. She didn't lose you. She lost access to the dormant force inside you she never fully understood, because you were never hers to begin with. You were still forming, still incomplete, still uncertain, still begging to be seen, and that's what she grasped. It's not a man, but potential masquerading as presence. She touched the surface of something ancient in you. The roots of your masculinity, the silence beneath your fire, the God beneath your gestures. But she didn't wait. She didn't trust it would emerge, and maybe she was right, because you didn't fully trust it either, not yet. You gave her the seed, but you withheld the storm. This is what most men miss. She doesn't mourn what she had. She mourns what she never got to witness. Your growth, your sharpness, your quiet power. She left too soon, but you were too soft for her to stay. Not soft in heart, soft in spine, in vision, in self-definition. You thought loving her was enough, but she was looking for weight, for substance, for a man who made her feel smaller in the best way possible. So now the work begins not to reclaim her, but to reclaim you. You are not her ex. You are not her regret. You are the man who became unreachable not because you vanished, but because you transcended the plane where she left you. That version of you, the one who texted too much, overthought every silence, chased her validation like it was oxygen, he's gone. He died the day you stopped needing her understanding to justify your existence. That man was a chrysalis, a placeholder, a symbol of your unformed strength. Now you rise, not in rebellion, not in anger, but in revelation. You no longer ask to be seen. You become impossible to ignore. And if she ever does look back, if regret ever touches her heart, it won't be because you demanded it. It'll be because your absence redefined her story. You were never hers. You were only waiting to meet yourself. You don't win by making her suffer. You win by no longer needing to. Sovereignty isn't loud. It's composed. It's the inner authority that arises when you no longer build your identity around being chosen, wanted, or remembered. You stop living reactively. You begin designing your life from a place of alignment, attachment. Strategic awareness means knowing when to detach, when to stay silent, and when to walk forward with unshakable grace. You're not here to prove anything to her. You're here to reclaim the parts of you that bent for validation, that begged to be enough, that feared being alone more than being unseen. Individuation is the final evolution. You integrate the shadow. You reclaim your anima. You become a whole man, not one who needs a woman to complete him, but one who attracts only those aligned with his soul's direction. You don't make her regret losing you. You make yourself irreplaceable by becoming who you were always meant to be. And now, it's your move. If this message shook something inside, you don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment with what spoke to you most. Like it so others find this truth when they need it most. Because there are men out there right now, lost in the fog of heartbreak. They need this clarity. They need you to show them the path forward. Become the man who ends cycles. not the one who repeats them. The future doesn't wait, and neither should you.